Hi, I'm Ross from Inspired Attire. This video is about threading up your sewing machine. A lot of people come up to me and say, I'd love to make what you make, I'd love to have a go, but I can't even thread my own machine. So that's exactly what this video is to try and help with, really. Dusting off some cobwebs on some old machines. Hopefully some people will be inspired to give it a go. My sewing classes that I offer start off at a basic level, where you can start to make cushions and do some quilting and do some applique as well. So with the stitches that I show you in this next video, you can start off and have a go. I hope you enjoy it. So to start off with, we need to start winding our bobbin. The bobbin is contained in a case which goes into the machine, which I'll show you later, and simply slides out. The bobbin goes up on this top piece here, and this actually clicks back to deactivate the sewing needle and make the bobbin turn around as well. With this machine, there's actually something to flick on the side to do that as well. So this is the needle setting, this is the bobbin setting. So now when this turns, the needle won't go, it's just this little spin. I'm going to put my thread up here and loop it round a notch here, which I'll show you in a second, and wind it a few times around the bobbin. If you don't do it enough, it won't turn and you'll just need to wind it again. So that's here that it goes round, so thread round there, over to the bobbin. And now, because we have deactivated the needle, when we touch the pedal, it just winds the bobbin. You can do this as much as you need. If you're just doing a buttonhole or something, you don't need to do so much. If you're doing obviously an entire garment, then it's worth having a full bobbin. I tend to have black and white bobbins completely full the whole time because I use them so much. So I've snipped it here. I move the bobbin away here and need to put it back inside the case. The case has a small notch here. So I put the bobbin in, and the thread needs to come out here and then just pops in there, and when you pull it, it should go clockwise. So I do that one more time. There it goes in here, the thread finds this bit, the notch, pops here and then goes clockwise. I'm going to pop it into the machine now, so this bit slides out and this comes down. You'll see a lot of mechanics here which look intimidating, but actually all this does is snip in, or click in, sorry. It's got a tool bit at the top which locates in a little notch in the machinery. So if you try and put it in any other way, it won't go. Once the notch works though, it just clicks in. And also to get it out, there's a small button on it which pulls away, a small piece of metal, that releases it. So it's not, you don't have to put too much force into getting it in. Okay, so now that's in, I'm going to reactivate the needle. So now when we use the pedal, the needle's actually going to turn. You can just leave this thread loose as well, it doesn't need to come through or anything, the needle will pick this up. That's good. Right, now for the thread, I'm going to pop it on, it goes back through this, and it goes down here, and then back up again. Normally there are marks here saying 1, 2, 3, showing you which way to go. At this point, I need to turn the handle always around and towards you, so that this hammer comes up. This is the tension hammer, and you thread the thread just through there, and then down. Then there's a little notch by this needle where it goes, and then you thread it through the needle. I do that again. It goes round the same blip that we used to wind the bobbin. Down here, up again, move the hammer up, through the hammer, down again, and then there's a little stow on this machine by the needle, and then you can thread the needle. And because we've reactivated it, when you sew, it will start to sew now. The needle will come down, pick up the bobbin thread, and you'll be ready to go. This is a newer machine for me, so it threads up in a slightly different way. I'm more used to threading up like we did for the first one, but it's pretty similar. We've got a plastic bobbin here that's a bit narrower than the other ones I'm used to using, but still, it goes on here and then pops just to the side. There's no button on this, the turning wheel, so you actually just pull it out to enable the bobbin winder. The thread goes on a sideways spool, so we have a small cap here which goes on, So when we start the needle off, it doesn't pull the thread that way when we're actually sewing. This goes around screw again, and then round the bobbin. Let's bring that round to show you again. So it goes from the thread round here, this way, and then over to the bobbin. And then again, you just use the pedal to wind the bobbin. Once you've got enough, you snip it here and take it off. Now this one, it loads in a slightly different way, which is the main difference. It loads into the tray, so you don't have to take all this off. There's a small black button here which you pull this way, and it pops this plastic cap off the guard. You put the bobbin in. There's a small notch here with an arrow showing it goes this way. I'm going to pull a length of thread through so it goes that way. So in it goes, and then through, and then it's turning like it's the arrow indicates. This cap then goes back in and pops in, so the bobbin's now loaded. We're going to pop this back in so that the needle works, and this threads up in a slightly different way. You need to undo this and pull it around this bit first. There's all arrows telling you which way to go, so now it wants us to go down, then back up, over the hammer again, which again you can pull this over and round towards you, down here. There's no notch on this needle, there's actually a needle threading device which pulls a little hook through the needle. It doesn't work every time on camera, I've found, and it just pulls it through, so you're threaded already. So for this one, it goes from the thread around the top here, under this, down, over again, sorry, under again and up, through the hammer, which is the most important bit to keep the tension, down, and then it either gets held there on other machines, or for this one it gets threaded straight away, and you're ready to go. Okay, so you're ready to start using the basic stitches on the machine now. Most important thing to remember is that behind the machine foot there's a lever which you can flick down and up to raise and lower the foot. Anytime you sew, this has to be down because there are some zigzag things called dogs underneath it that feed back at the same time you sew, and it helps the fabric go through underneath the foot and sew the line properly. So with your foot down, if you ever sew with it up, it will just smash all into one place on exactly the same spot, and at very least it'll be a nightmare to unpick. It might even mess up the project that you're actually doing. So with a straight stitch here, my machine, you can change the setting on the side here through straight and zigzag stitches, and you might notice the needle here flicking around as I change them. I'm going to start on the straight stitch because this is the most important one. Up here, the one that I use the most often, I mean. Up here is the stick's length. It goes from 5 down to 1, and then there are some small dots here. These are for buttonholes. I use them mainly for some absolutely tiny stitches. Usually I use about setting 3 or 4, because you get 3 or 4 stitches per centimetre, which is it looks nicest basically in a long line of stitching. So I'm going to put it onto setting 5 to start off with, so we can see how wide they are. This button here is the reverse stitch. You need to hold it down, and when you use the pedal you'll go back a couple of stitches. This is really important to start and finish a line. So if I start here, I'm going to go a couple of stitches forwards, but then hold this and go a couple of stitches backwards, and then I can continue my line. This basically means that the line won't come undone. So those are some stitches on setting 5. If I move it down to 2, you'll be able to see the difference. See, it's going through much slower, the stitches are much closer together, and again when I get to the end of a line, just 3 stitches backwards with the reverse stitch. The needle's been left in there, so actually instead of trying to perfectly time it with the pedal, you can actually move the needle here to complete its journey up. When it gets to the top, you'll be able to lift your foot up and pull the fabric out easily. This is quite important as well. It's great to leave about 6 inches, if not a little more, on the thread. It seems a little wasteful, but if we only had a couple of inches, the next time you sew, the needle's going to pull up and it's going to come unthreaded again. It's not a problem, but if you do that 100 times through the course of a project, it makes you quite cross. So here we've got our line. You can see here that This is setting 5, this is setting 2, quite different, but that's basically a finished line. All you got to do is just trim the excess to make it look nice and neat. See, this bit didn't quite catch with the reverse stitch to start off with, so it came up like that. I'll show you more of that later. So that's one line, that's a straight stitch. And with most of my classes, if you can do a straight stitch, you can actually go through the content. I'm going to change it now onto a zigzag stitch. On some machines, as well as the stitch length, you'll have a stitch width button. With this one, you're choosing the width of your zigzag stitch here, but you may well have two dials up here. I just recommend having a fiddle with it basically to see what everything does, so it won't be a surprise. If you do something like this, arbitrary as it probably sounds, you'll be in command of all these tools when you actually start to sew. So here, I'm going to go, there's a few stitches, go a couple back, zigging and zagging, and I'm going to change it onto setting 2. Then actually, if I play again with it, we'll go on to one of the smaller ones. So this is on the longest stitch length, but the smallest width of stitch. There you go, I'll change this, running out of space, and then more importantly, a reverse stitch to finish it off. Completing the needle's journey, always come up and over towards yourself, so even if you just dip in, complete the stitch. Otherwise you'll be left with threads on the outside. Okay, so here we go. This is setting 5 and that's setting 2 on the stitch lengths. And then this is actually the stitch widths. You can see they've gone in here. This is 5 and then 2. Sorry, no, this is a thicker one and then a thinner one. Okay, something else we're going to do is I said you need to always use your reverse stitch. I'm going to show you why. If I put this down and just sew, not in setting 2, on setting 5, you think, brilliant, I've got my line, continue the needle all the way round to the top and then pull it out. Lovely, last stitch of what I wanted to do, that's brilliant. It looks like it's sewn brilliantly all there, but look, you see, this is going to start coming undone there. Less so if you use stitch 2, but even so it still happens there. As you know, if you've ever had anything come undone, once one goes, the next one's up for it as well. And it will just keep on going, really, really easy. So you've really got to get in the habit of using a reverse stitch at the start and the end of everything that you do. Right, one last thing I was going to show you as well is changing a needle. You'll need to do this quite often. If the needles get blunt, they'll start to pretty much sabotage what you're doing. There's a tab just here that you can turn around and it quite simply releases the needle. The needles have a flat face and then a domed face, and it's the flat bit that goes to the back. So I push this down and then back up again. I can just tighten this up and it's sorted, it's back in. You can get different weights of needles. You can get really lightweight ones for thin fabrics like chiffons, and you can get thicker ones for doing stuff like denim or going through a few layers of denim as well for alterations. If you start using the wrong needle, what it can do is it can actually pull the threads of your fabric and start ruining the thing you're working on. So it's probably worth buying a couple of packs, they're only a few pounds each, and then you'll just be armed to be sewing at the best of your abilities at all times. And lastly, I'm going to talk about the tension dial, which is up here. Once we've threaded all the way through here and gone back up and put it through this hammer, as the needle comes up and down, you'll see that the hammer does also, and it's pulling. That's when this setting on this dial is applied to this. Usually there is a line indicating the factory settings of like what they recommend. So this is usually between 4, 5 and 6, and it goes up to 9 here. Basically, I don't fiddle with this too much. Once you, if you notice that your stitches are loose or too tight, then it's puckering the fabric or gathering it. It's probably worth looking at this, and literally like I've done here, just sew lines up and down. If you're really stuck, just do a line on 1, do one on 2, do one on 3, do one on 4. Choose the best, see what's happiest, what the fabric's happiest doing, basically, and just make sure you're on the right setting. I very rarely change between anywhere as far as 4 and 6. I tend to leave it on the same setting most of the time, just to get my basic sewing done. I hope you found that informative and useful. One other thing is you can take your sewing machine along to your local sewing shop to see if you can get it serviced. Often they have a travelling mechanic, or they can run it through themselves. All this means is they can oil the machine inside, they can set up the tensions, replace bulbs, etc. And you're going to be using the best possible tool to start your projects off. If you did like this video, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, we're on www.facebook.com/inspiredattire vintage. Thank you very much for watching.